And welcome to What's Hot and What's Not, setting your 2025 content marketing plan. My name is Evelyn Austin. I'm an EVP of Strategy and Development here at REQ. REQ is a full-service digital marketing and communications agency with a unique focus on supporting business-to-business and business-to-government technology and professional services companies. Today, we're bringing together our in-house experts along with an esteemed panel of marketing and communications experts who we get to partner with on a day-to-day basis as clients. And we're so thrilled to have you all here. Thank you. Before I pass over to Pete, who will be today's host, a few housekeeping notes. The webinar today is going to be recorded, and we'll send out a link to all registrants following the session. Please share it with your colleagues, with your networks. It will be open to the public. Maria and I will be monitoring the webinar chat, and we plan to have about 10 minutes of attendee Q&A at the end of the session. If we don't get to your question, please reach out to us at marketing@req.co. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd be happy to follow up with any questions that we don't get to today. So without further ado, Pete, I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, Evelyn. Hey, everyone. I'm Pete Larmey. I'm the Senior Vice President of Editorial Services at REQ. Thank you very much for coming. Today, we're going to give you a sense of what some of your peers are doing to prepare their content marketing plans for 2025 so that you can be inspired by them. We want to use this as a chance to talk about some content marketing trends our panelists are seeing, lessons they've learned over the course of 2024, how they're applying those lessons to next year's plans, and more. And I'm super excited today to be speaking with four fantastic panelists from four very different types of companies. And I want to give them each a chance to introduce themselves. Jess, let me turn it over to you first, if you want to say hello.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I am Jess Lindberg. I'm the Vice President of Corporate Communications at ScienceLogic. We provide an AI-powered IT operations management system that monitors, automates IT infrastructure, applications, et cetera. Kayla?
Hi, yes, I am Kayla Rice-Pretzer. I am the Director of Brand and Communications for SpyCloud. We exist to disrupt cybercrime. So we take over our 700+ billion recaptured assets and embed them into solutions for organizations to better combat cybercrime. Over to Linear.
Thanks, Kayla. I'm Linear Norville. I'm the Director of Content Marketing for Tricentis. Tricentis is a B2B software company that makes software testing tools. So we help some of the largest brands in the world create better quality software faster. Megan?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Radonia. I am the Senior Content Marketing Manager for Yext. And Yext provides a platform to help multi-location brands. So think, hospitality, maybe restaurants, maybe financial services, or providers and hospitals. We help them centrally manage their digital presence.
Excellent. Thank you all. So before we start with the actual discussion, we're going to poll the audience. And we're going to have a few of these poll questions throughout. But the first question, and Maria, if you want to put that up, is about your content planning for 2025. We want to get a sense for what your content plans are, how far along you are. Do you have a strategy in place? Where are you right now with regards to that? It's October. We're getting towards the end of the year. So we wanted to get a sense for that. And then also just to get a sense for what some of your top goals for your content program are for next year, whether they be fundraising, lead generation, recruiting talent, thought leadership, et cetera. So we'll give you a few seconds to enter your selections in there, and then we'll see what we have. All right. Do we have some results that we can show? All right, so it looks like the majority of folks have started their planning, but still in the works, which makes complete sense. And yeah, a lot of people are just starting their conversations around their content planning, and it looks like they're starting some ideas. So hopefully this discussion today will spur some of those ideas and get you moving. And if you do have a set strategy in place, then maybe what you find out today will help augment that strategy or add to it. So with that, I want to direct my first question to Kayla. Kayla, you guys at SpyCloud have been doing some really unique and interesting things around your content. I was hoping you could share some of those things and how you kind of came up with this unique approach that you're doing and how that approach is going to play into your content planning for 2025.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. So it's really interesting kind of where our content sits under our brand umbrella. So it's really important for us not only to provide assets and materials that are not only for brand awareness, but for lead generation. And so we kind of take a wide approach to the types of content that we create, but we also always want to be authentic to who we are as an organization, the audience that we're trying to serve, and the solutions that we can provide value to these organizations. So this year, our team, and I have to, give a shout out. I have a fantastic creative studio that really has come together to be innovative and kind of thought provoking of how we can share what can be potentially some very scary topics like cybercrime and cyber threats and ransomware and malware infections, where to our typical cyber group, they're well informed of kind of what's going on, but they may not be as informed about the stolen data that is powering these attacks. And that's really where we come in. And so we want to be able to broach those topics in a way that is engaging and digestible and approachable. And so this year we really took a lens of how can we take these topics that can get very involved and are very data driven and very dense, and bringing them to the masses in a way that could be more fun and engaging and kind of kick them back off their heels a little bit to want to read or view something further. So this year we took a theme of kind of video gaming and gaming as a whole. And the idea was really, not playing games with cyber criminals, like taking, your security very seriously. And so we started out with our first pillar report earlier this year with a more nostalgic 8-bit video game approach, where we could kind of layer in these puns and this tone that was maybe a little bit more playful or a little bit more consumer focused, but in talking about a topic, which is, identity exposure and stolen identity data, that just kind of kept the reader engaged. And we took that all the way through every asset, whether that be the webinar or an infographic or social media. And then we kind of did that throughout the entire year. It was a overarching marketing campaign that we also drove through our field events, through our trade shows. And then most recently, we actually just published our malware and ransomware defense report, which is a survey of over 500 security professionals. So taking what their understanding of the state of ransomware readiness for their organizations and kind of how they're combating that. It is a next generation threat in our mind. There are tactics being used by criminals that organizations are aware of, but they're always evolving. And so knowing what we know, let's take a visual approach to that also levels up that, pun intended, that playing field. And so we did more of a first person journey storytelling, but in that gaming theme as well. And we've had, resounding results from that. We just hit about 200 downloads, and it's an ungated asset. So it's very large, very robust, has great information, but we wanted to make it to where folks could really kind of see themselves in it, because we are, we're marketing to cyber professionals, but we're marketing to humans, and everybody has interests and hobbies. And so finding some folks where they might be and what their interests are, and kind of gauging them from kind of some standard, in the cyber world, there's just like a lot of blue marketing. We don't use that. So we wanted to do something a little bit differently, and it's resulted in some really great interactions, some great leads, some great conversations for us.
Yeah, I think what you did was really, really cool and interesting. And I know that we put some of those assets up so that folks can go and take a look at them. The way that you kind of married the theme and the tone with your overall brand experience, and you were able to use that, as you said, for 12 months or so and use it with other different types of content deliverables that you had. I think that was really interesting. And I think you did a great job with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's, one of the things that I think is hot about content is you can make data-driven decisions of what you're sharing, but you can take some risks and you can be innovative. And I think using some visual elements, or we even placed some sound on our latest report page. So if you look at the malware and ransomware, there's a little bit of a thematic tone to it, and so it's not taking away from the seriousness of the content and what we're talking through and what we want to provide and our value, but it is just giving something different than what they may see in the market. And so for us, it's a way to also just stand out and give ourselves a little bit of a challenge. So I think that there's some different ways that you can carry that into next year's planning as well.
Yeah, I think that's great. I would encourage folks to check those out if you can. They're really, really interesting and really compelling. Lanier, I wanted to go to you next because I know that Kayla talked a little bit about how they come up with their material, and a lot of it is through research that they do. I know that you guys are also doing a lot of research, so you're using just this great amount of material that you're compiling. I wanted to ask you about how you're using all this research that you're doing, all these reports that you have in your marketing efforts. How does that translate to what you're putting out there?
Sure. Well, our bread and butter at Tricentis in our content marketing program is what we call evergreen content. So it's content that's covering the topics that our buyers are always searching for. And so I think it's really important to break that up with a periodic investment in high value research-based content that's more time bound, that's covering a trend that's important right now. And the idea behind that is that we're regularly releasing this market leading thinking. We're demonstrating our leadership position. It's not about Tricentis. It's not about our products. It's inherently valuable to our readers. And I think that's really important because it not only helps us establish and maintain credibility and trust as a go-to source of expertise on a market that's changing really quickly, but it's also a great way for, I saw a lot of people listening in. Your primary goal is lead gen. This is a great way to feed the top of the funnel. If you're hitting on the right topics and you're covering it through a new lens or in a new way, or maybe even the first to talk about an emerging trend. And then from that longer core piece, similar to Kayla, we're deriving a lot of related assets. So it can sort of feed the program indefinitely, right, until it's time to do the next version of that, or until we feel that the data is stale and that the trend is old news. So we'll typically create a content-rich landing page that highlights some of the key findings, and our report is gated, unlike the malware report Kayla mentioned. But we're giving just enough away to attract and engage people, right, and sort of have the highlights there for them. Sometimes we've done an interactive page where the graphics will load as you scroll, and you can do different things there. We have not put sound on the page, so I'm definitely going to go look at your malware report landing page, Kayla, because I think that's a really cool idea. But then we do a webinar within a couple of weeks of publication to share kind of our perspective and take those top of funnel readers, maybe down to the next level of, what should you take away from this? What does this mean for how you're building your software quality strategy and team in the next few months? We'll also do a short video executive summary, and then of course we're pitching it to media and enabling our sales team and product marketers with those stats as they speak one-to-one with prospects and build other stories that we're telling. So that's one way that we take that investment and really get the most value out of it.
Yeah, and I know that when we talked recently, you had mentioned that when you were looking back at 2024 and thinking about your content plan for 2025, you were really looking at focusing on quality over quantity. And so how does that translate into the types of content marketing vehicles or the types of pieces that you're looking at for your content mix for 2025?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the periodic investment in research is definitely one of those things, right? There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much budget. So we're not doing a ton of those, but we're getting a lot out of the ones that we do. And I think in general, across all of the content we create at Tricentis, quality over quantity is really critical, because our company offers 15 plus products. For many of those, we're selling into different buying centers, to different types of people within an organization. And so we have to really think about how do we work smart to hit our goals across all of those different products and audiences. And so when we look at how to be more efficient next year, it's not necessarily about, reducing a certain content type or doing less of one thing. It's more about, for every piece that we create, making sure that we're filling a gap in our content library in terms of the key topic or the challenge or pain point we're talking about, or the product feature, as well as the funnel stage. So whether it's that research and education, top of funnel survey report, or it's something about best practices, or whether it really is for a buyer who's ready to see and dive into what the product does. And that changes as our business goals evolve and our products evolve, and as the market changes. And so we have to kind of stay flexible. And one example of that has played into a lot of our 2025 planning is that our business is maturing. And so now, as a company, we're looking at how do we grow within our existing customer base. And I think in content marketing, we have a chance to really make a big impact there and contribute to that goal. So we're looking at how do we develop content that speaks directly to our customer audience. So not just focusing on lead acquisition and acceleration to, qualification and becoming customers, but what does that full customer life cycle look like, and how do we continue to engage those people after they're part of the Tricentis customer base. And so I guess really the takeaway here is, instead of hitting a certain quota, right, of content offers, it's what does the business need right now, what's going on in the market right now, and what's going to keep our audience engaged.
Yeah, the need to be agile, right, to be able to change as necessary. And that actually brings to mind a question, Jess, that I wanted to ask you about, because we talk about quantity and the ability to change as things change. You guys have a really, really robust blog program. And that's definitely been an important hot part of your content mix for 2024. I wanted to ask you about that. Why are blogs still so important to your marketing efforts?
Yeah, so when we really started planning for our content for 2024, we started out with a theme approach. And so that came through with all of our content, not just specifically our blogs, but we really focused on, where do we get our revenue from? What is most important to our customers? What are we selling? And we kind of divided our content up based on what we were doing with our revenue, and putting certain percentages of our different pieces of content towards those goals. And so with our blogs, I think what has been most successful there is, one, not only do they ladder up to these content themes that we're putting out there, but it's a mix of both thought leadership for our C-level audiences, but we also have some pretty technical content for our product managers, for the people who are in the field and really kind of doing the work. And so the content that we are able to provide covers each of these different topic areas that they're interested in, but and different formats. So we have our C-level track, we have our technical track, and so there's a little bit of something for everybody. And within those blogs, we do a number of things where we're giving tips and tricks, we're providing benefits and value. Some of them could be additional white papers and videos that we offer. So there's different ways that people can use the content, and so it helps from if you think about the long form contents of the ebooks and the white papers, where this allows you to kind of get that more in a bite-sized chunk. So we'll do a lot of series on different posts. And so you can kind of go through a phased approach, or you can get, different chapters of maybe a longer piece of content. And so that's where we've seen a lot of the success on our site.
Yeah, and you were telling me about how you kind of figure out what your themes are going to be, and you talk a little bit about how you do that, because you work directly with your executive team to kind of match their goals to what you're planning, right?
Yeah, so we start with what our corporate goals are for the year, and we start to funnel that down. So, okay, we've got these, 5 corporate goals, we've got these streams of revenue. And so we will take that bits and pieces, we'll take the customer feedback that we're getting, we're looking at what's happening in the industry and news and trends and whatnot, what our competitors are saying, what the analysts are saying, and we kind of marry that all into these themes that we put together. And so when we really try to think about the content that we're covering, we're really going through quarter by quarter and saying, okay, here's how we're going to map to this theme. Here's how we're mapping to this corporate goal. Here's how we're matching this revenue stream. Here's, the analyst said these 5 things. Here's how we're, addressing those content. But at the same time, a great plan is great to have, but, things happen. Industry trends change, news happens, a new customer inquiry comes in, we launched a new product. When any of those things happen, we're able to pivot pretty quickly. And I think the blog is a great medium to do that with. It's not a 6-month research project that we're having to invest a lot of money into. We're able to kind of pivot with thoughts and trends and tips and tricks in our blog posts. And one of the other great things about it is that we've been able to take a lot of our different employees around the company and show their expertise. We've got really great technical leaders, we've got really great executives, we've got really great points of view, and that has allowed us to kind of share that knowledge and industry expertise with our customers, with our prospects, with industry.
Perfect. And then since we're talking about different types of content right now, we have another poll question that we wanted to put up there. We want to get a sense for what types of content you guys are all prioritizing for 2025, whether it be longer form content like ebooks or white papers, blogs, case studies, maybe some video content or podcasts. Let us know what you think. We'll give you a couple of seconds to enter that in there. And let's see, do we have some poll results? Looks like video content is going to be pretty popular next year, as well as blogs too, and customer testimonials. That's interesting. We are going to talk a little bit about video content as well. In the meantime, Megan, I wanted to ask you about the types of content that you're seeing be most effective right now, and what's going to be part of your 2025 plan. And then as sort of an addendum to that, we've been talking a lot about gated and ungated content as well. What's your take on that?
Yeah, right on. I think what we're going to be leaning into that we've been testing in 2024 and are going to do more of in 2025 is something that Kayla touched on, that more visually rich content. We've noticed that through heat mapping tools and other avenues, folks tend to either skip to the end of a piece after they've digested those key takeaways, or maybe there's a piece that's really data-led and there are some stats or some charts within, and they're spending more time, or they're even clicking on those areas of the piece, trying to maybe learn more or dig deeper. So we've tried to prioritize leading with visuals, even if it's not necessarily a traditionally visually first format. So an example is we ran a consumer survey over the summer, trying to better understand how people are looking for information about brands and searching for products. And we packaged that up in a blog and in an ebook, but in a way that really prioritized concise text, but lots of images, lots of visual ways to get that quick information download. Something that we've noticed too is that when we do focus now on more traditionally visual content types, like maybe a downloadable template or a checklist that's more interactive, we're seeing higher conversion rates on those pieces too. So I think our 2025 mix will see hopefully short and sweet content, but lots of beautiful visuals with the help of our wonderful creative team. And then I think it's also a really exciting time to think about that gated and ungated question, because traditionally we were really taking an approach that anything short form was ungated and long form was gated. And that was mostly due to our attribution limitations. In order for us to understand, lead attribution, and if we were generating, ROI off of a piece, we needed that gate to capture information. But we're starting to change our MarTech stack a little bit. We're onboarding some tools like 6 Sense and Hockey Stack, and those will let us understand a little bit better how we're reaching accounts and engaging with those accounts and what types of topics they're interested in, whether or not there's a gate. So partly I'm excited about that because I think that there's some content pieces that sometimes don't get as much love, like a blog. A blog can be really valuable, even if it's not gated, when you're able to measure it in a different way. And it'll also help us, I think, provide some of that content that is more educational, that is visually rich, that is supposed to give you that sort of like quick hit of information to help you do your job better and sort of access value immediately. We'll be able to provide it in the format that folks are looking for. We market to marketers, and I know probably a lot of people on this call are marketers and feel similarly that you're maybe a little bit skeptical before you fill out a form. You might get maybe added to an email nurture or some BDR outreach. So we know our audience is also tending to browse anonymously. They really think critically before they fill out a form. And so we're hoping we can provide them ungated content at the top of the funnel, and even a little bit further down, almost close to decision, and make sure that they can access it, but then also provide those gated experiences for some high value pieces, like a demo or maybe something like a webinar where you need that attendee tracking.
I wanted to hop in if that was okay, but Megan, I loved what you said about kind of knowing your audience and understanding their experience. Something we found also in this last year is, we're marketing to cybersecurity professionals. So they're already risk averse. That's their whole, name of the game. And then we're talking about, identity data as, part of our core solutions. And so why would we ask them to put in their identifying information if we're trying to help them better protect all of that? So it's just these small nuances where you understand your audience best and making some adjustments and still having some placements where gated makes sense, to your point, like the webinars or demos where really getting that contact information is so vital for the next step. But I think that's just such a smart approach to it that we've also noticed and will continue into 2025, is just really taking cues from who you're trying to market to and then maybe making some adjustments on the back end so that you don't lose them right at the first interaction.
Megan, also had a question. So you mentioned a couple of tools that you're using there. You had mentioned to me when we spoke about it a week or so ago that there was another tool that you were using for your visual content. I think it was Crazy Egg.
Yes, yeah, a heat mapping tool. There's a couple out there. I think like Hotjar is another one, but it's really nice for sort of like the more qualitative look. It's a tool that we find really helpful when we're sitting together like across our entire brand and comms organization. Our, thought leadership and editorial leaders get a lot of value out of seeing where people are sort of spending the most time in the piece. Maybe we can extract some ideas about why that topic might be resonating. Our creative team finds a lot of value in understanding exactly which parts of the piece people are sitting with that are very visual, where they might be skipping. And I really like it because you can get some channel data and see, our folks from who are have a lot of intent because they search for the topic, actually spending a lot more time with the piece versus maybe somebody who got it through a social channel, isn't quite ready to leave the app and aren't quite sure where they're there and they're not engaging as much. So it's hard to scale, but for those high value pieces that you invest a lot in and take a lot of time with, it is nice to have that sort of reflection, I think, through a tool like that.
Excellent. Thank you. And then Kayla, I wanted to go back to you, sort of the same question about what types of content you're seeing resonate with your audiences right now and how you're gauging the success of that. But I also wanted to just touch on your use of video as part of your marketing mix. And I know that was something that in the poll question, the majority of folks are saying that they're planning for. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yeah, so last year we really charged ourselves with trying to create, as Lanier mentioned, this working smarter and not harder, taking maybe some pillar pieces and breaking them out into more digestible functions. So blog has been a phenomenal place for us, not only just from a findability and what can be a very crowded space, but also just being able to showcase various different topics and, to Jess's point, our expertise in-house. And then another way that we're doing that similarly is so we have it in text form via our blog, but we're also doing it in video. So whether that be short 90-second explainer videos about a use case that we have for one of our solutions, or doing, recorded on-demand webinars. We've also been testing something we call Deminars, which others may be doing it as well, but it's, an on-demand webinar of some of our experts walking through a demo of our solutions. And that's been really great because, again, it's that idea of meeting your audience and your prospects where they are. They may not have a ton of time to read our very exhaustive but dense research report that's full of great insights, but they can watch a 3-minute highlight video, and it's something you can still embed in a blog. You can share it on a video channel like a YouTube where someone might find that more organically, but it just diversifies how someone can get to the same information in just a very different way. It's something we're definitely going to be taking more into 2025. And what's been really exciting about that is it allows us to also partner across our business. So working not only with our product marketing team, who are really embedded in what is coming for our solutions and how that could be of value, whether it be for an existing customer or potential customer or one of our partners. And then working with the expertise in-house, our organization launched something called SpyCloud Labs at the beginning of the year. And that is an in-house research team. So it is security researchers who are in the criminal underground and really understanding, what's happening. And so being able to put a voice with these folks and these experts has been very beneficial because it allows our target demographic to really start to put together why we are a solution of premier choice. So I highly recommend kind of diversifying out of maybe just more of the written word, which still has a place for it, but trying to kind of just mix and mingle a little bit more of visual or audio, even if it's sound bites in your blog rather than just a visual representation. That's been working really well for us.
Yeah, and as somebody who has seen some of your Deminars, I can attest that they're very, very well done. So kudos to that. We've been talking a little bit about gated versus ungated content throughout the course of this conversation, and we have another poll question that we would like to put up around that very topic. So yeah, we're wondering, what does your content strategy prioritize? Are you gating your content? Are you ungating it? Is it a little bit of both? We'll give you a few seconds to answer that. And Maria, do we have some responses? Looks like it's mainly ungated at this point, the vast majority. So, yep, that sort of lines up with most of what we're hearing today, I think. So, Lanier, I wanted to ask you about, I know you've been doing a lot of gated content. You've been doing a lot of longer form content like ebooks and byline articles from executives and so forth. How do those types of things, and when I mean longer form content, I'm thinking mainly of written content right now. How do those play into your 2025 plans? Are they still effective vehicles for you? And then as an add-on to that, I wanted to ask you about this idea that we had talked about earlier of smart brevity and how you kind of marry the need to be concise and punchy with these longer types of pieces that you're writing?
Sure. So for our audience, some of the more traditional longer form stuff, white papers and ebooks, still works. So we're going to keep doing that. Of course, we're mixing in lots of shorter form things, videos and multimedia assets as well. But a strategy that we've had particular success with is this idea of 10x content. And what I mean by that is when you Google the topic you're going to write about, you want your version of that piece to be 10 times better than anything that shows up on the first page of your search. And by the way, for people in the audience who are focused more on Ungated, who are doing a lot of blogs, you can and absolutely should consider that, whether you're putting it behind a form or not. We've done it on the blog, and had a lot of luck with that. For us, just because the getting somebody into the database is really important. We'll include a conversion piece kind of above the fold, like pretty high up, right? Whether it's a webinar that goes more in depth or the gated companion piece, or something that's just related that we know somebody who's hitting on that trending topic might be interested in. Maybe it's a best practice that's sort of that next step down. But I think to do that well, that 10x idea well, it probably is going to end up being a little bit more in depth. And Megan talked about how to make stuff visually interesting and make content more consumable. So you can think about breaking things up into subsections, including visuals. We've also used some creative navigation and other UX elements on HTML pieces, embedded videos, even like a series. So our webinars actually, and I know we're talking about written content, that's getting shorter too, but our webinars have gotten shorter. And so sometimes in 30 minutes, you can't cover the whole in-depth topic, right? So we break it up into a 3-part series, and that's a great way to capture people and then keep that engagement going. And I think in terms of smart brevity, it is really critical to keep that in mind, no matter what content you're creating, what the format is, what the length is. It should be only as long as it needs to be to get the message across. I have a journalism background, so clear, concise, and correct is sort of our guiding set of principles. So even if we're writing a white paper, every word is going to count there.
Yeah, and I know that when we talked before, going back to that idea of the 10x content, I know you said that when you had applied that, I mean, you're still seeing things that were done a long time ago still popping up on the first page of Google search results, in part because of that strategy that you were using.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes it does take a little bit of time to see the results. But there are, like I mentioned before, there's evergreen topics that as somebody, as their leadership changes or their business changes or whatever it is, it's now time for them to look at, okay, I need to update my software testing strategy. There's a set of questions that person is going to be asking that's still relevant today, as it was 3 years ago. So what we do is just regularly sort of go in and take a look at those pieces that continue to perform and make sure that they're up to date and working smarter, not harder.
That's the key. So I wanted to get into the elephant in the room because we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the use of generative AI in content creation. So Jess, let me start with you on this one. Are you using AI for content creation? And if so, how are you using it? And what do you think the pros and cons of using things like ChatGPT or whatever other tools you might be using? What are the benefits and drawbacks of that?
Yeah, so like I talked with my blog strategy and the content that we are creating there specifically, we have lots of really, really great expertise in-house and subject matter experts who are able to help lend their their information to those pieces of content. But what we are doing to extend the life of that content, because we all know everybody's busy, so you only get so much time with the subject matter expert, and then they have to move on, or they're ready to be done with the sourcing sessions. But all of our, whether it's blog posts, whether it's thought leadership pieces, articles in the news, that kind of thing, those are all human written. And human generated content. And then we take those pieces of the content and we do use generative AI. So we onboarded a tool this year called Jasper AI. And so we are then able to import those pieces of content that are human written as knowledge-based articles. So whether it's those thought leadership pieces, whether it's a messaging doc that we created for a new product launch or things like that with our product marketing team, we can put those things into Jasper as the knowledge base, and then we're able to create extra content. So whether that's a speaker submission, whether that's a top 10 tips piece of content, our solutions briefs, web copy, 6 Sense ad campaigns. We've been using Jasper for quite a number of things, and it helps the rest of the marketing team to be able to use the content that is created. And of course, with everything that lends itself to generative AI, you still need human oversight. You still need review process. You need human eyes to check the content because it's not perfect. You know, there are some things that get mixed up. So you always want to make sure you're doing that. But we've seen such really great success with efficiencies in our marketing team that the rest of our company is now interested in signing on. So we have our docs team, we have our sales team wanting access. We've got lots of different groups of people who really do want access. And the one thing that I would say about Jasper versus the ChatGPT or Claude or anything like that, we take security very seriously at our company. And so with that, we can't just put information into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any of these other tools because they are large language models. They are not necessarily secure. And of course, we never want customer data in those platforms, whereas Jasper had gone through a security review internally. So we had specific approval to put that into our system and to be able to use it. And the way that Jasper works is small language. So none of the content that we put in there goes out to the world. It stays within our little community. So that keeps our information safe.
Yeah, that's obviously extremely important. And then Megan, let me ask you as well. What are your thoughts about Gen AI for content creation? How much do you think you're going to be using those types of tools for your 2025 content?
It's definitely something we'll continue to use in 2025. And I think it's so funny. Jess, I written down ideas from how you're applying it. 'Cause we have a similar, I think, philosophy around it, but use it at a slightly different part of the process. So we tend to use it, like I noticed a lot of other marketers do, and some recent data from Content Marketing Institute, sort of like that brainstorming or maybe the outlining and brief stage of content creation. So we've definitely found it saves a lot of time when you take an ingestion that a human has created, you know, whether that's a messaging source document or some sort of, product release information. And then we're able to maybe distill audience information, or maybe we're able to distill some pain points and use those across the different intake forms that we would need to submit throughout our content production process. It's definitely been something that we have made sure to do a lot of enablement around internally. We've been working with Grammarly AI and onboarding that across the marketing team. And our team and our editorial lead in particular have been doing a lot of enablement around storytelling and the importance of human oversight over AI. Our editorial director jokes that she knows when ChatGPT wrote something because robots use certain words that people don't, like delve. That was her big tip, but she said she's keeping the others close to the vest so that she can, have that power over us. But I think it's really important in making sure that everyone can be efficient and effective, to make sure that we're enabling people to write a solid prompt, to make sure that they know how important it is to use it to save time, but not to be necessarily the end all be all of a piece of content that's going out there in the world.
Note to self, don't use the word delve when writing copy. You would also mention to me some of the shortcomings of AI would be things like the inability for it to really understand your style guide and those types of things. So you get your editorial team involved in that, right?
Absolutely. There has to be an editorial review on sort of anything we create, and whether or not AI is involved in maybe the inception of it, but I think especially then.
Yeah. And so we actually have another poll question. Not surprisingly, it's about generative AI. So I'm really curious as to how our audience is planning on using Gen AI for content creation next year, whether it be for longer form, shorter form, research ideation, or if you're not using it at all. We'll give you a few seconds to input your answers there. All right, can we show the results? Shorter form and research and ideation are the clear winners there. Yeah, that kind of tracks, I think, with what we've been saying and what we've been thinking about. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the ideation point, I know that that's clearly an advantage of Gen AI. Does anybody have any sort of thoughts about that part of it? I know that Jess and Megan, you had talked about using it for developing some of that shorter form content, but are you using it for research as well, I would imagine?
We've been using it to help us vet like the questions or like the actual surveys that we might put into market in order to develop research. So the first step there is always us developing a narrative, developing a hypothesis, doing all of our own creative scoping, right? The human first. And then we might develop a set of questions that we think will help us achieve the outcomes we want. But using AI is sometimes helpful. It can help us maybe reword the question in a couple of different formats, and we can kind of think about what might be the easiest for the audience to consume when they're actually taking that survey. Or maybe it will help us find a couple of gaps of topics that we wanted from our narrative, but we didn't quite hit in the questions. So we've been using it as sort of a research buddy in that way, if that makes sense.
I've sometimes used it to double check things that I'm working on, just if I'm writing an article or something like that, just to make sure that I captured all the key points that I want to capture and I didn't forget anything. I find it to be pretty helpful when doing something like that. So I want to be mindful of time. Do we have any questions from the audience that we want to include there?
Yeah, we've got a couple that have come in. One quick question here for you, Megan. Could you elaborate really quickly on that analytics tech stack that you've implemented to help track the efficacy of your content plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So 6sense is a tool that we brought on to mostly help us understand how people are ingesting different topics. And then Hockey Stack is the other tool, and that's more to understand how accounts are moving through the journey at a little bit of a different level than we were able to in the past.
Awesome. And then one quick question for you, Jess. Are newsletters, email, LinkedIn valuable for building brand reputation? How does that kind of fit into the larger narrative there?
Yeah, I think so. Our lifecycle marketing team focuses on customer newsletters and working with bringing them that information. So they'll bring them our latest blog posts or pieces of content or research papers that we put in there. So again, our audience is mostly high level tech folks, so they don't want to be bombarded too often. So I wouldn't say for us that the newsletters are necessarily bringing a lot of traffic to our site or anything like that, but I think it's just like another medium that we're able to connect with an audience and bring them the information. We also have community forums that our customers are part of, in which we bring our news and information to them there.
We just got a question from Brent asking if Lanier could say more about the enabling of the sales team. What specific content is given to keep them on message and engaging in the right point in the buyer journey?
Great question. So for the reports specifically, like if we've just invested in some research, we'll host a session with the sales and BDR teams
and just come up with a really digestible set of like, these are the 5 key findings, and this is how you can tie them to a message that's really important to get across to your prospect. So, for example, we're selling to software delivery leaders, heads of quality engineering, and we just did a report on how AI is being used across the SDLC. One of the findings that we really want to highlight to the sales team is that among survey respondents, software testing is the area that they plan to invest that shows the most promise across their entire development lifecycle in 2025. That's great for us, right? And we might not highlight that in the report and how this means that you need to buy Tricentis tools, right? But being able to draw those conclusions more directly for them and then provide them with a set of stats and slides and even an email template where they can outbound, cold, or maybe to somebody who they're trying to re-engage with something that provides value. It's not just, hey, hop on the phone with me, haven't heard from you in a while. It's, we just released this research that I think is going to be really relevant for you. Do you have 15 minutes where I can take you through some of the key findings, and just making sure that they're prepared to do that. So it's a softer approach to get somebody engaged or re-engaged. I hope that answers your question.
And then I think kind of a burning question here everyone would love to know more on. Are there any strategies or tools you've tried that have not worked well for you, haven't netted any of the results that you were looking for, and are potentially moving away from because of it?
I would say one. So we have a podcast that we've had for about 3 seasons now, and we get some traction there. But we're trying out a couple different strategies to see if it's going to resonate a little bit better than it has been. I think that for a while we didn't have a specific strategy around it. And this past year, we've tried to add more customers to our podcast, tried kind of different hosts, and we were playing with time lengths because sometimes our team loves to have conversations and they get a little long. And so we get a little worried that they're dropping off. So trying to do a little bit more bite-sized pieces of the podcast. So, like a 20-minute car ride or, walking the dog or something that people can listen to. But we haven't seen huge success with our podcast. So I don't know for 2025, and I hope my team's not listening, but whether we'll continue that for next year, or if we, try a different format or something like that. We certainly want to keep the audience that we have engaged, but with the amount of effort that it takes to put out an episode, whether it's, worth it.
Jess, we went through the same thing a couple of years ago at Tricentis. It was so much fun, but it's a ton of work to produce and really difficult to demonstrate ROI from, or to even understand exactly who is listening. I mean, there's some tools that can help some, but lots of other ways to put out short, engaging snippets that you have a bit more control over.
Agreed.
One question here for you, Kayla. In using webinars for demand gen, what's the right mix between on-demand, live, gated, ungated, kind of the approach to that kind of content?
Yeah, I think what we found is if it's kind of something that's hot off the press or a trending topic, a more live conversational approach that is gated, where we can kind of capture that audience immediately, has been great for us. I talked a lot about our pillar reports, but even when we do sometimes some of our product launches that are more, breaking through the industry and wanting to get that information out quickly and concisely, but into a broader audience, we found that to be really great. On the more of the pre-recorded or on demand, if we're doing product feature updates, or if we're taking them through more of a technical piece where they can really sit, pause, understand, what we're going through, that has seemed to work a little bit better for us. And it's, I think, understanding which members of our audience, whether they be, a C-suite leader versus, more of a practitioner style that needs to kind of get into the weeds and get into the nitty gritty, balancing those two depending on the audience and the topic, I think is kind of pivotal to their success. And I think part of that too is, and I might be jumping the gun, but you know, the idea that we have is not being afraid to try. So the question of, you know, what is something that like didn't work or you don't want to, you know, go back to? It was hard for me to think of something because everything has been a learning opportunity, as cheesy as that sounds. And so there's always an ability to kind of make some adjustments and learn from it. And so I think just being able to, you know, test out, you know, one live webinar a quarter. And if that doesn't seem to really float, then you have the opportunity to still make that on demand, or, you know, take little snippets of it, put that, you know, on your site for a more gated, you know, form filled opportunity, or even use it on social where it doesn't need to be this long drawn out thing. I think similar to what one of my other, you know, panelist peers mentioned, it's, you know, finding people where they are and giving them the information that they can kind of take in a much more like direct and focused way without, you know, having to spend a lot of time or resources to participate in.
Awesome. And then, oh, Linear, did you have something else to say?
Yeah, just it might be helpful to quickly add that for us, timeliness has been really critical when deciding what to do live. So for example, we've just come back from a huge event and 900 people stopped by our booth, and we want to send them a thank you that says, oh, by the way, sign up for our webinar that's happening in 2 weeks, where we're going to go more in depth about this topic that you heard a little bit about at the event. That's worked really well for us for pulling leads forward quickly that have just entered the database. So just wanted to share that strategy.
Awesome. And I think we probably have time for one last question here. This is for everyone on the panel, Pete included. Do you approach content strategy differently when it's focused on B2B services rather than B2B products?
My answer is fairly short. We are more of a SaaS-based organization, so we are B2B products. Services is something that you know, we've talked about doing throughout, and we definitely have an amazing customer success team that goes well above and beyond in ensuring that our solutions are being leveraged and used by the right teams. But we don't really have to dabble in that space as much. So I'm really interested to hear, you know, how the other folks, because it might be something we have to look at in the future.
I mean, from my perspective, I think that there is a slight difference. You know, we work with a number of clients that offer both products and services, and we may decide to use a certain type of content vehicle for one rather than the other. For example, I mean, maybe if you're offering a certain set of services, it might be more, you know, appropriate to do something like a data sheet or something like that, or, you know, rather than something more product oriented or something. It really depends upon the situation, but I do think that there are certain cases where we would probably recommend doing something slightly different for each. Certainly in the messaging and the tone, I think that would be appropriate to have them be somewhat different. Absolutely.
Well, thank you all so much for gathering today. Before I pass it back to Pete for closing us out and key takeaways, just as housekeeping for all of our attendees, we are recording this. We'll post it to our YouTube. It will be ungated content for you to share with your team members, and we'll have a link out to that via email. If you do have follow-up questions, or if we did not get to your Q&A in today's chat, please reach out to us at marketing@req.co. And one final poll question that we'd love to pop up for any of those who are interested in getting in contact with us to talk about your 2025 marketing and content planning. We'd love to hear from you. Is now a good time for us to connect? Maybe in a few months as we head into wrap up budgeting seasons, or if it's not appropriate, give us a shout. We'll go ahead and close this, and then I'll pass it over to Pete to close this out. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Evelyn. And to close it out, I just had one question for all of the panelists. If each of you could just take 20 to 30 seconds or so, just tell folks if you had one thing that you wanted them to take away from this today, what would that one thing be? Jess, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. I think my favorite tip is theme planning is really where, it helps us to be organized. Having a really good strategy around the themes of content that you're going to be putting out for the next year is a great place to start.
Kayla, what do you think?
Sorry, I lost my mouse there for a second. I think my theme for this whole conversation is not being averse to taking a risk in your content, really charging yourself and your team to look at maybe even traditional content mechanisms differently and how you want to approach that, and then making sure that you're tracking and reporting on that to kind of see what's working and what's not.
Linear, how about you?
You don't have to be an expert to develop really awesome content that the experts that are reading it are going to appreciate. Get to know them, get to know your audience, spend time with them, get out there to conferences. As Kayla said, they're real people trying to solve real problems. So tap into your subject matter experts, build your Rolodex, get good at interviewing people, spend a day in their shoes, and rely on your internal subject matter experts to then review what you've found and put together.
Great. And Megan, why don't you send us off?
I think I would echo something that I think everybody's touched on today, and that's to create content for people, period. I think as the industry changes, we have a lot of conversations around AI. Maybe we see the search landscape is shifting a bit. Might be tempted to have that at the forefront, but I think always thinking about people as people and what motivates them and their pain points will lead us to create content that's super valuable and really help them.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up. I want to thank all of the panelists today. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everybody who attended. Thank you for asking your questions. Everybody have a great day.